Hey, this is the Xbox Dadcast, a podcast about the Xbox and the upcoming Series X, maybe S, specifically from the eyes of a casual gaming dad. I am Morgan, aka Bond Diesel, and I am a Xbox fanboy, PC casual, and Division 2 podcaster. I also happen to be husband to a lovely wife and father to an adorable, terrifying daughter. We'll start this one off with me saying, hey, new podcast. I'd really love some support, some attention on it. So if you enjoy it, if you like the subject of this podcast, please retweet, share, post, send a letter to a friend who may be interested, and check out the Twitter account at Xbox Dadcast. Okay, episode 3, simple logos. This week, we are going to talk about the new Series X logo that was revealed, Lockhart or Xbox Series S rumors, all digital systems, Xbox versus PlayStation finances, and that's about it. So let's jump right on into it. So with the news and rumors for this week for Xbox, we got a new Series X logo. So there was a trademark filing that people I'm sure there's people who every single day just scour trademark filings to find new controller designs, new technology, new logos, and so on. Recent notable ones have been, I believe there was a controller, the trademark that was made or copyright by Sony. They had their technology that if you are sucking at a game, it's going to suggest microtransactions for you to get through it, which I think is interesting. And more recently, Sony actually, I think, had some type of robot that will have feelings and you can talk to it. Yeah, we'll see what Sony does with all of that. But with Microsoft and specifically Xbox, people caught wind of a new Series X logo. So if you haven't seen it, it's essentially on the left side of the logo, it's the word series in a vertical from bottom to top. It says series, and then there's a stylized X to the right of it that is just as tall as the word is vertically. It's extremely simple. I've seen some various different takes on it. There's a few different podcasts I listen and watch, and it kind of depended basically if they don't care about Xbox, if they prefer Xbox, or if they prefer PlayStation on how they reacted to it. What I didn't see people mention very often, and I actually saw some comparisons by people and trolls in the comments of like, PlayStation's reveal was so much bigger. It's like, yeah, because PlayStation literally at an event just revealed the PS5 logo. This was, Microsoft didn't put this out as a big press release. It was literally stuff that people found. Now, last week we talked a bit about the upcoming events, that there may be 2 of them, maybe in May, maybe in June and July. And I'm sure they're going to reveal it then. But as for now, we just have this trademark. And I think it looks nice. It's nothing that crazy. I feel like Xbox is definitely going for a very kind of professional or adult kind of look to their marketing and all of that this time around. What I think is going to be really interesting is after seeing, the PlayStation 5 logo is fairly simple. And people joke that it's like the PlayStation 2 logo, but the 2 is flipped upside down to be a 5. From seeing the new PlayStation controller, I actually have a feeling that the PlayStation 5 console is gonna be like bizarre looking. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Personally, I, go figure, because of this podcast, prefer the Xbox design to anything like really curvy and kind of, quote unquote cool looking, because I like the idea of just a box sitting on my desk, something that's fairly nondescript, especially for people who are in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, who want to game and they have a little entertainment system set up in their living room. That Series X that we've seen, uh, it just looks like a piece of technology. It almost looks like a big Alexa or a big Google Home or something. It doesn't. Even the current Xbox One X has a fairly, and even the One and One S have these like kind of professional looking designs to them. And the PlayStation 4 does as well. So I'm kind of curious to what this all means. But um, something I saw pointed out on the Unlocked podcast, that's the IGN Xbox focused podcast, is they're pointing out too that these trademark logos typically are like the simplest version of the logo. So when they actually start putting out marketing and they start using this logo on things, it may be a little more stylized. It may have a gradient on it or have some colors added or whatever. My assumption is that they're basically going to use this logo, and if there is an Xbox One S, that they'll use some type of similar logo for the S, and this will be the way that you can like quote unquote like easily tell the difference between the systems. And I think that that's going to be necessary. We'll talk a bit about all of those systems living together in a segment here in a few minutes. So new logo, I think it looks nice. I don't think this is groundbreaking stuff or anything to get overly excited about, but I do think it should be noted, and we hopefully will get more soon. On the topic of the One S or the Series S that I mentioned, rumors resurfaced about the Series X, or the codename Lockhart Xbox system. So this has been talked about for a while. I want to say up to even a year ago, or maybe even further. There's been chatter about potentially a cheaper, slightly less powerful Xbox that will complement, potentially even at release, which I actually don't think is going to happen. I believe that there's going to be about maybe 6 months to a year before they release a lower system like that, but we'll have to see. So what we are hearing right now is that this Series S will be a bit less powerful, in that it will be the rumored power on it is 4 teraflops, which would be interesting because the current Xbox One X is rated around 6 teraflops. But they're saying that because of the new infrastructure and hardware and the NVMe SSD that would still be in the Series S, that 4 teraflops would actually equate to closer to like 7 or 8. I don't know. That stuff all just turns into a bunch of gibberish to me, to be totally honest. To me, I think that from a visible point of view, or looking at it from the outside, if they put out a Series S that on paper or can be or through some interpretation can be seen as being less powerful than the Series the One X, and I think it'll just end up getting dogged on, but who knows? This is all just guessing. This is all preliminary information. People have been putting out some renders of what they think it'll look like, and literally the only thing I've seen is people just cutting the Series X in half and just making it half the size. We'll see if they do that. I don't know what they would do form factor wise, because the Series X that we've seen, those components are jammed in there pretty good. And just because the Series S would be less powerful doesn't actually mean it would be smaller, because it's still going to need the same components. They just aren't going to be as it won't have as much memory and things like that. So we'll have to see kind of what that may mean for what I think. I think they will do this. I mean, with the Xbox One, we had the One S come out shortly after, and it wasn't the One X. It had a little bit different form factor, and I believe it could play back 4K, like medium, but not games. And then the One X came out that could do 4K games, and everything else. So I suspect that the Series S will be a thing, but like I said before, probably not at launch. The final bit of news and such is Red Dead Redemption 2 coming to Game Pass. This game, I'm a bit biased when I talk about it. Red Dead Redemption, the first one, was the one of, if not my favorite game ever. So when Red Dead Redemption 2 was coming, I was, you know, predictably excited. I played it, finished it. If anything, I kind of want to play through it again because it's a very long game and it's relatively drawn out. And I have to admit that about a third of the way through, I got kind of impatient and basically just started blowing through the game as quickly as I could, not doing nearly as much like side quest and exploration as I wanted. So it's definitely a game I would like to go back to. But I love this game. The story, the visuals, the world building, the characters. I got used to the cover system in the game. A lot of people really moaned and groaned about it. I don't think it was that bad. I think you just had to be willing to learn it. But even then, it wasn't the most intuitive thing on earth. The shooting is still pretty bad. It's I'm hoping that Rockstar eventually gets away from just this ancient way of doing their gunplay. It's just not. It's bad. I mean, it's fine when it comes to a difficulty point of view because after you play it for a few hours, you learn how to start sweeping heads, and you can just start getting headshots on everyone that you're fighting. But it's very clunky and not fun. So beyond those things, though, being able to play Red Dead Redemption 2 for the Game Pass price, on top of everything else that's available, is just bonkers. It's so much game for the money, especially seeing that right now you can get, the pass for like $1 for a couple of weeks or something right now. There's some really good deals out there if you search around a bit. So if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2 yet, I highly, highly suggest it. One note or caveat to consider is that I believe around the same time that Red Dead Redemption 2 comes on, Grand Theft Auto 5 will be leaving Game Pass. Just, Rockstar being Rockstar. These games are insane. Honestly, I'm pretty surprised that Rockstar's even willing to do that. I saw some interesting or funny comments from people being like, "Oh man, Rockstar's gonna go bankrupt for doing this." It's like, no. Even though Grand Theft Auto 5 has been on Game Pass for the last, I think, 4 months, it's still been in the top 5 or top 10 selling games for the last 4 months. Which, when you consider it's a 4 or 5-year-old game, older than that, I can't remember when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out. It's probably, I think it's older than that. The fact that a game that old is still selling that well, and it wasn't impacted by Game Pass, is just bonkers. So Red Dead's going to be fine. If you haven't played it yet, I highly suggest it. Just realize you're in for a long, drawn-out story with a lot of twists and turns, and I just loved it. I thought it was such a great game. So check it out. Okay, on to some speculation and opinions and so on. So I kind of wanted to talk a bit about how I think they're going to handle the Series X, a potential Series S, the One X, the One S, all of these different SKUs all kind of living together. So as I talked about in the first episode, I worked at GameStop for 3-4 years. I also worked in other retail such as Verizon Wireless, corporate, and some other stuff. And one thing I do remember is the sheer number of different systems, even back then. So I worked at GameStop from 2007 to around 2011. And even back then, like the Nintendo SKUs, Xbox, see, that was during the Elite or the 360 days. So we had the Elite and the base and the arcade Xbox. And now, to be fair, that was basically just the Xbox, and either with a hard drive, a memory card, or a really big hard drive. And the Elites were black. But I really honestly think that one, I think that a lot of the quote unquote concerns from people about there being too many SKUs are pretty overblown. I think the big thing is the big reason is because the price points are going to be so different. If there was going to be an Xbox Series X and a Series S and they were only going to be $50 difference in price, okay, cool. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. People are going to get confused. But right now, if there's a Series S, my breakdown of prices right now is I think the Series X is going to be $500. I think the Series S would be around 300, and I think I think they'll sell out what they have left of the One X's for probably 200. But I don't think they're going to continue like making the One X. For a while I thought maybe they would turn the One X into like oh like a streaming machine to use the xCloud system. So basically you have your One X, we know for a year or two the games that come out on the Series X are still going to work on the One X. And then when that's over and they start doing exclusive Series X and up games, then I always just assumed they would keep selling the One X and say, hey, the One X, it can't natively play these new games, but you can use xCloud, and this machine can run xCloud extremely smoothly. But I don't think that now. Now I'm pretty confident with these Series S rumors that there's going to be that's going to be the machine that I honestly probably utilizes xCloud at some point. I think that this logo that we saw come up in the trademark is another way they're going to help these systems all live together. I will admit though that the One X and One S and Series X and Series S branding is going to be a hair confusing, but I think once the new gen comes out and that's all that's available new, for 99% of people it's going to be fine because that's all that's going to be available. Like I said earlier, I don't think the Series S will release the same time as the Series X. I would expect it at least a few months later, up to a year later. So Series X releases this October, November, whatever it's going to be. And then the Series S, maybe they reveal it at E3 next year. And it comes out for the 2021 holiday season to give people that option. I don't know. It's going to be, because the problem is right now there's already concerns about PlayStation 5 and Xbox having issues with supply chains and such, and I can't imagine that adding a whole nother SKU would help with any supply chain issues. I assume the Series X and the Series S would use a similar SSD and other components. So wouldn't you think that you would want to dump all of those resources into your premier product, your Series X? But maybe I'm an idiot, and maybe having a cheaper system available to get more people on the new platform and the having more install base, especially if PlayStation 5 may struggle with install base at first, maybe it's worth it. There's probably some people at Microsoft and Xbox who are, maybe just a hair smarter than me. So I'll defer to them on those decisions. But when it comes to the kind of the ecosystem of having all these systems all kind of working together, I think they're going to phase out the One X. Obviously, I think they'll phase out the One S. And I don't actually know if they're still making, quote unquote, new Xbox Ones. I assume they are, but I'm too dumb to know and too lazy to find out. But the one hint we kind of got is that they're making 45,000 of these Cyberpunk Xbox One X's, and they did say that will be the final unique One X that they're gonna make. I don't know if that means that they're done making One X's as well. We'll have to see. The second thing that's been kind of talked about, and it's been a topic before because it's currently a topic with the One S, is a all digital Series X or Series S. So this would basically involve removing the DVD drives entirely. I'm down for this. In the current gen, the Xbox One and One X that I've owned, I personally haven't purchased a single disc in this generation. I did have, I got a Christmas gift, the year that Assassin's Creed Origins released. and my Christmas gift from a Secret Santa that year was that game on disc. I'm looking at it right now across the room. I played it, I beat it, I took that disc out of my machine and have never put that disc back into another machine since. So I am completely down for an all digital system, especially if it means that it saves space, maybe makes a hair cheaper. I think this is probably going to be more important for like the 1S or a budget system, or the Series X, because that's what they did with the 1S. There's currently a digital version of the 1S, and it's a hair cheaper. I can't remember. I want to say they released at like $200 or something, but you can correct me if you want, either wherever you're listening to this or on the Twitters at Xbox Dadcast. Feel free to correct me. But I'm down for it. I think that's great. I'm down for a digital system. I kind of understand the argument from people to say like, oh, I want the disc in my hand. That means I own it. I mean, with games nowadays, it basically doesn't. At the end of the day, now that's just basically a disc that is equal to the code that you punch in and download the game. Most of the games, as far as I don't know if any of the modern games actually run off the disc. I assume that they basically all run off your hard drive at this point, and your disc is essentially just proof that you own the game. I don't trade in games. I haven't been to GameStop, especially not to trade in stuff, in I don't know, 10 years since I worked at GameStop, maybe. So that's not really something I'm too worried about. And like I said before, I think if it helps with prices, I think if it opens up availability for more hardware or more cooling or something in the systems, I think that's the way it should go. I wouldn't be surprised if we get this Series X and Series S with DVD drives, and then we don't see any more systems after that with DVD drives. I think whatever the 1X equivalent for this next gen is going to be, that they'll eventually move to no disc. So we'll have to see how that goes. The final thing I'll talk about here is something I've talked about before, kind of in my other content. I stream and make videos as myself as Bond Diesel, and I also run another podcast for Division 2 called the Echo Cast. So if you're interested in either of those, check them out. But something I've talked about in those situations before is, this gen, PS4 and Xbox One, Sony just obliterated Microsoft in this gen. The main reasons being a really awful start by Xbox trying to do some things. Maybe they were a bit ahead of their time. Maybe they were a bit overconfident from the 360 gen. And also just never really putting out that many exclusive games that were like big system sellers. Halo 4 and 5 ended up being kind of meh. Gears of War is just, oh cool, there's another Gears of War. It's never been a franchise I'm super interested in. And they just really didn't get, I would say around the 1X is when Microsoft really turned this gen around, but really it was just for themselves, because as we know the numbers today, Sony has essentially doubled up the Xbox One sales with their PS4 and PS4 Pro, and they've earned it. They put out a bunch of good exclusive games, and I still argue that their hardware and especially their peripherals and stuff, and even their UI and their online systems are all inferior. But at the end of the day, Xbox doesn't have a Last of Us. Xbox doesn't have a Horizon Zero Dawn. Xbox doesn't have a God of War, even though I think it does now with Hellblade, but we won't get too deep into those opinions. Not this episode. So something I think that people don't often consider, though, is so the parent companies of Xbox and PlayStation are very different companies, right? And what I think people haven't realized is that the purpose of Xbox and the purpose of PlayStation, from my observation and something I've felt for 15-20 years now almost, is that PlayStation is a money maker for Sony. That's what it's there for. It's why they invest so much. It's why it exists, because it makes Sony an epic crap ton of money. I, especially in recent years, I don't think Microsoft continues with the Xbox brand necessarily to make money. Now, it's a business. They're a business. They want to make money. If something loses money, obviously they're not going to keep doing it. So no, I'm not being so much of a fanboy that I think that, Xbox is a charity. I obviously don't. But what I do think Xbox is, Microsoft is originally an operating system company. Now it's everything. They make hardware, both the Xbox and, the Surface tablets and things like that. They even have like industrial things that they do. They have a big thing is their online infrastructure business, where they sell bandwidth essentially, or storage. They're the only real competitor to Amazon in that window, and they still have Windows. They still own the Windows platform. And what I don't think people consider very often is that I have always seen the Xbox for Microsoft as a way to get their platform in front of more faces and into more homes. And so that's where I believe that, I really believe Microsoft would have loved to have quote unquote won this generation over Sony, that I suspect that Microsoft still isn't disappointed with selling 55, 60, 60 million units of the Xbox, because that's still 55 to 60 million units in people's homes with their product on it. Obviously, I'm sure they would have preferred to have 120 million. But what I think the problem with the whole console wars, outlook is the only real measure anyone cares about is number of consoles sold. And what I think we're going to see with this next gen, especially with the fact that Xbox has clearly come out and said that, they're still, the games that come out for the next couple of years are still going to work on the old gen, which is essentially them not forcing people into the next gen for at least a couple of years. We don't really know what Sony's doing with that. I feel like they haven't been that blatant, but it sounds like some of the games that come out are going to be both. But what they still haven't really come out and said yet is, if you buy The Last of Us 2 for the PlayStation 4, will you just be able to start up your PlayStation 5 and download it and you play it? I still think there's a lot of people concerned that they're going to monetize that in some capacity. We'll see. I don't want to speculate that in any seriousness, because we don't know. We don't know either way. But what I don't think people realize is that, like, when you look at the parent companies here, you're talking about companies in two different leagues. Microsoft is worth over $1 trillion, right? I believe it's around $1.2 trillion. That's not just a lot of money. Like, that's a bizarre, that is a incomprehensible amount of money. And Sony, I believe, from what I looked up, is worth about 78 billion. That is a ginormous company. But that's nowhere. I mean, you're talking about where Microsoft could essentially buy Sony 20 times over, almost. Like, and that's where it goes back to what I was saying before. In theory, Xbox could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars a week, and they would never notice. It wouldn't hurt them. And as long as they were still, if their goal is to just get their product in front of faces, that they would be fine. That's fine. That's just an expense of business, right? Where Sony can't do that with the PlayStation, because a bad PlayStation, PlayStation not making money would affect them way quicker than the Xbox not making money. Again, let me go back and be very clear that both of these companies want these systems to make money, and both of them want to be quote unquote the best. But I really just think that, when I look at it, I see people, and really the console wars thing is so silly anyways, getting involved in this podcast and starting to kind of dip into the community a bit. It's really kind of bizarre how, like, it seems like 90% of the influencers, whether they're Sony, PlayStation or Xbox fans, it seems like they're not even there to talk about games or the systems. They're just there to shit on each other. And it's kind of annoying. I don't know. I've dealt with my own trolls and stuff like that when it comes to being a Division 2 creator, and I've handled that better at times than others. But like, what I don't, it just seems like it's the only thing that some of the creators in this community are all about, which is fine. If the part of this you enjoy is quote tweeting people and fighting about things that really no one should care about, go nuts. But what I think is kind of lost is that I just don't think people realize that at the end of the day, I really do believe that both of these companies have different goals for these systems. And even more at the end of the day, if you're a PlayStation fan, you should want Microsoft to, you should want the Xbox to be awesome. Maybe you don't want it to be as awesome as your system, whatever. But the thing is that like PS4 and this current gen, PlayStation isn't being pressured by anyone to be better. And that's why I think there's still a lot of things about PlayStation that are subpar in a lot of ways, because they have no reason to be better when it comes to their their environment, their UI, their systems in general, because they have these games that made them sell twice as many systems. That's it's why games come out that maybe aren't quite as good. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but the PlayStation game, the zombie game that came out with the motorcycle guy and all that, like that game, from all intents and purposes, from what I've seen, just is very mediocre at best. Days Gone, that's it. And but it's still a PlayStation exclusive, and it still gets that same kind of treatment from a lot of people. So and right now, all we really know about the PlayStation 5 and the games that are coming is there's like some like sword RPG game that's coming. I assume Ghost of Tsushima is going to be on that as well, which I personally haven't really understood the hype for that game, but some people are super pumped. And then you just have like a bunch of sequels, which is great. The sequel to The Last of Us, the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn, the sequel to God of War. I'm sure they're going to be amazing games. I have no doubt. But it kind of makes me wonder if, the fact that Sony basically had no pressure from Microsoft in this gen, I hope it doesn't mean they got complacent and things like that. And I genuinely mean that, because, in a perfect world, both systems are killing it with games, with hardware, with everything behind, and then they're trying to top each other. And the more that these companies are competing and actually trying to top each other, the better things get, and the more competitive they get with prices. So it increases quality and will typically lower prices because they're competing both in quality and pricing. So while I'm sure it's fun to dunk on one side or the other for whatever reason, what I don't think people realize is that actually them competing and being very close to each other is better for all of us, and then especially for PC gamers, because the better Microsoft is doing, the better games that they get from AAA studios as well, because only a few PlayStation games are put onto PC. I know Death Stranding is coming. I believe there's rumors that Horizon Zero Dawn is going to be on PC, but all of the Microsoft exclusives go on the PC as well. And so that's a bunch more AAA games that you get as a PC gamer. So even they should be, rooting for everyone, essentially. And so we'll just have to see. I think what the point of this whole talk was about how I still think that there's a slight chance Microsoft is going to try to undercut PlayStation on the price of the new systems. I could see Microsoft maybe even do the Series X for like $450. Maybe not at launch, but maybe not, maybe before the holidays or before E3 2021, or the E3 timing, whether E3 still exists or not. But we'll have to see. At the same time, it may also mean that Microsoft is going to be more stingy, and they're not going to be willing to sacrifice because maybe they don't care as much about being the top dog as Sony does, and so maybe Sony is going to undercut Microsoft. It does right now seem like Sony's kind of holding their cards close to their chest, and I think waiting for Microsoft to say more, and then so they can kind of dunk on them, because the most infamous, I think, video game next gen thing was in 2013 when Xbox revealed their really stupid DRM system for games, and how you have to trade them or sell them to other people. And then PlayStation, Sony having the most epic dunk 360 no scope little commercial I've ever seen of them showing how you share games. And it was just two of them, and one guy just hands the game to his friend, and that's how you share games on PlayStation. I mean, it's that moment right there may have been the difference of 30 million systems sold. Like, I really believe that. I have no doubt that that might have accounted for half the difference, just those optics and how awful it was for Xbox. So we'll see. I'm really excited. Even if on this podcast I do seem like a bit of a fanboy of Xbox, because I am, I do genuinely, for the reasons stated before, I want both of the systems to do awesome. I think the biggest hurdle right now to both of the systems having a good release is Xbox has to announce 2 or 3 really badass, exciting exclusive games that we haven't heard of before. It can't just be Halo Infinite. It can't just be Hellblade. It can't just be the new Forza. It has to be 2 or 3 games we've never heard of, or maybe some big reboots. I think a Fable reboot could be in that category. There's a few different games I think they could quote unquote like bring back that have been gone for long enough. I don't think Fable even had an Xbox One game. I thought maybe it had like a Kinect game, but that doesn't count, let's be honest. So I guess my closing thought is that I really do genuinely want both systems to be amazing and to have really awesome games and to just be neck and neck when it comes to quality, because that's good for everyone. Okay, this week we don't have any listener questions. If you want to bring up any topics or fight me on something or anything like that, feel free to comment on the Twitter account where I post that, I ask for new topics. So it's at Xbox Dadcast, or you can follow me at Bondiesel. You can comment on the YouTube videos. I have a Discord, so if you look on my Twitter or in the YouTube, there's a Discord link, and you can join the Discord and ask questions in there, or even discuss the episodes in any of those platforms. I want to hear from you. I would love things to talk about. I would love to give my opinion on things that you think, and if it's purely for the sense of hearing me rant, then feel free. But with that said, I'm gonna wrap this baby up. Please take a moment to rate this podcast on whatever platform you listen to, as it helps the show get noticed. If you want to support the podcast or my other content, please check out patreon.com/theechocast. I am at Bondiesel on Twitter. I am also Bondiesel on Twitch, where I will start streaming on May the 3rd again. I'll throw that out now. 2 or 3 times a week on top of these podcasts that I do. And that's all I have. So until next time we meet, be good, game on.